Good evening, everyone. It's been so long since I saw you all. Thank you very much to everyone who's in attendance this evening, in addition to the Cabinet members, on what obviously is tinged with sadness, but is a very important duty that we must carry out this evening. I haven't even said what I'm talking about yet for anyone watching later, but welcome to this Cabinet meeting of Horsham District Council on the 24th of September 2025. I won't proceed with the usual housekeeping announcements, as everyone knows where everything is, other than to please make sure your phones are still turned off and note that a recording is being made. Apologies for absence. Apologies from Councillors Ruth Fletcher and David Skip. So it's just the 7 of us this evening on the Cabinet. Declaration of members' interests. I have a feeling a couple of my Cabinet members may have declarations to make, so I'll start with Councillor Mercer. Microphone, please.
I have to declare I'm a member of West Sussex County Council.
Thank you, Sam.
I'm also a member of West Sussex County Council.
Thank you very much. Item 3, announcements. Can I please remind Cabinet members to take questions to the Cabinet? Can all of the members present direct questions to Cabinet members rather than directly to officers in the room, and Cabinet members will refer to them if necessary? Are there any Cabinet member announcements? No. Chief Executive, any announcements?
No.
No, thank you very much. Item 4, public statements. No statements from members of the public have been received. So, we move on to item 5. Approval for the submission of the business case and proposal for local government reorganisation in West Sussex on pages 3 to 206. Yes, that's 206 of the agenda. I will be. Do I have to do this disclosure? I think so. I'll be introducing this report as leader of the council. Before I do so, I should mention that Cabinet members have agreed that this decision will be treated as urgent. The Chairman of the Finance and Performance Policy and Scrutiny Committee has also agreed that the decision is urgent and cannot reasonably be deferred. As such, once made, the decision may be implemented immediately, and that is because of the fact that obviously we have to actually submit this to government on Friday, because that is the deadline. So, on to local government reorganisation. Whilst I have the same script as I have before, I'll try to lighten it a little bit or shorten it for some people who've already listened to it twice before, but it is important, I think, for anyone viewing online or later to know what it is we're here to discuss, which is the invitation that was received in February of this year from the Minister to put forward, and it was invitation was received by all councils in West Sussex to put forward proposals for local government reorganisation in West Sussex in order to bring about a single tier system of unitary authorities in West Sussex. Authority or authorities in West Sussex, rather than the two-tier system as we have it at the moment. A detailed business case has been put forward through very collaborative working actually, across all the councils in West Sussex in support of unitarisation for West Sussex, including a financial business case, which, after considering many options, brought us down to three options for unitary authorities structure in West Sussex, and that has been engaged on with the public, with findings of that engagement being included in the evidence base, and I've also, as leader, engaged with leaders of the other groups, the other scrutiny committees, and my own group, and we've also had what was a very useful, interesting debate on the issue earlier on this evening as full council. So I would say that all members have had the opportunity to consider the matter discuss it fully and ask any questions that they may have. Maybe not every question can be answered to everyone's satisfaction at this time, but that is the nature, I'm afraid, of the process that we're on. In that we are on a timetable, and not absolutely everything can be bottomed out in the business case. But I do believe it's a strong and robust business case. So the options that we, as Cabinet, need to consider, which we've been considering for some time, but we're still considering before we make our final decision this evening, is on putting the business case, submitting it to the Ministry for consideration, and expressing our preference as Horsham District Council for the three options. Option A being a single West Sussex unitary, option or one of the two options B, which is a two unitary authority solution for West Sussex. In each of those cases of two unitaries, it would be Horsham, Crawley and Mid Sussex in one, Chichester, Arran and Worthing in the other, and the difference between option B1 and B2 is under B1, Ada District is included with us here in Horsham, Crawley and Mid Sussex. In B2, Ada District would be with Worthing, Chichester and Arran. So this has been considered by scrutiny committees yesterday evening. Many points raised in the debates there, fed through to council this evening, and quite a lot of helpful consideration input into that council debate that we've just had this evening. The headline item, I suppose, from that would be we had a non-binding indicative vote on option B2, which has been, is the recommendation that we have before us for support, and that essentially received a significant majority in support of it, with a number of abstentions, but no opposition to it. So that's kind of the headline item, and I think that's useful to get, essentially, to inform this decision now. We can have our views as cabinet members, and we will have expressed those in terms of our participation in that indicative vote. But you need to see what the rest of your council thinks as well, in order for us to be able to make a final informed decision, which is what we're here to do now, and I'm sure all members of the cabinet would agree with that. Some very, I think it was a very positive, helpful debate. I think there was a slight, as I said at the start of this meeting, tinged with sadness, because one way or another, this is going to mean the end of this council eventually, a council which has successfully looked after the interests and supported the residents of this district for 50 years. Whoever's been in charge of it at whatever time, I think is and has been a very successful council, so something that we can all be very proud of. So it's not surprising that there's not an awful lot of excitement or enthusiasm around the room, or wasn't in the chamber, for something that has been forced upon us, essentially. But times change, and we must change with them, I suppose. And I think it's the concerns around what that change is going to actually look like and mean for our residents that I take away from it, principally. I'm looking at members here and thinking of their contributions. I think Councillor Croker, referred to, said that what we're looking at here, in many ways, is the least worst option. I think that reflects how a lot of people feel, but we still have to make the best of it. I also, bear in mind what Councillor Olsen says. He may say more later, we'll see, but around, if we're going to try and, I may be putting words in his mouth, but the way I felt when he spoke was around, there is an attraction to creating something new out of this, rather than rather than it being winners and losers or this institution or that institution. You know, as we take this forward, we all across West Sussex need to work together to come up with something that's going to serve people well. And I think in many ways doing something new and unique going forward, possibly, you know, will add something to that. Yes, it's been a challenging and a difficult thing, this. So what I might do is enable, you know, other members here in a moment to speak, who, if they want to reflect on any of the other points that were raised by members in the debate this evening that I've not touched on, because obviously it was only a little while ago and lots happening. But my preference and my predisposition, my preference for a while now has been towards option B2, for reasons I've stated in previous debates around needing to stay, you know, if there is not a strong case financially between one or the other, and there isn't really, we have a robust business case that has two options, both of which are deliverable and both of which are sustainable. And I, you know, pay tribute to all the leaders of and chief executives of the other councils and all of their officers and ours on putting that together, because I think that's quite an achievement to actually. It's not something that happens in every business case or every proposal that's being put forward, but we have two proposals that are both deliverable and both sound. So it needs to be, okay, so which one of them then is going to deliver the best outcomes, is going to serve our residents best? I believe the two unitary option does that. In many ways, it will be closer to our residents. There will be more possible options and ability for them to engage with the new authorities going forward. And those authorities can be tailored to more tailored to the specific needs of the areas they cover, rather than having to be homogenous across a wider area. I think as I think I said the other night, I reached a point going through all of this. I never wanted to be completely against the case for change, because I said the other night that the one thing you could say about the current system is if you landed on Mars and yesterday and had to set up a system of local government, it wouldn't be the one that we've got. So I've never been kind of dyed in the wool. No, two-tier system is the best. We must stay this way forever, because there are issues with it. It's a question around the upheaval of it, and I tend to be optimistic about, you know, new ways of doing things. But the closer we've got to the end of it, and I've realised, you know, the finances on this, we've said that they're narrow, and maybe it's uncertain to differentiate between the two. But I look at it and go, you know, in the best case scenario, we could be looking at savings of 4%, even if that works out. After all of the upheaval that we will go to, after all the risks of the change, I just find myself thinking sometimes, all of that for 4%. But, and here's the rub, I think to myself, well, we've got to do it. So if we're going to go through it, we need to make it worth it. We need to make it the best it can be. We need to build something for the future that is the best it can possibly be, rather than accepting something that's the lesser of the disruption to go through. Because what we're doing here is we're making an investment in building a system for the next 50 years. This system has been around for 50 years. I think we should plan for at least the same next time around. And if you're looking at 50 years, we owe it to ourselves and we owe it to our residents to make it as good as it can possibly be. And that's what drives me towards thinking, you know, there may be more, you know, challenges with disaggregation of services, but I see them as challenges, not necessarily as massive risks that we should be terrified of. I see them as challenges to be overcome in order to deliver something better in the future. That's my goal in going through this exercise. But I've probably rambled on a little enough at this point. I think the first thing I'll do is I'll open it up to contributions from other members present before coming back to Cabinet members for their views. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Leader. I think everything that's been said this evening, I don't want to repeat all that, but I can see the logic to going for a two-tier, two-unitary model. As you said, the savings of 4% are not really the driving force behind this, and I'm not surprised that members are fairly unhappy with the whole prospect of what this is going to entail going forward and how the transition is going to work. Logic says the housing market area and the economic area, which covers Horsham, Crawley and Mid Sussex, makes a lot of sense. So I can understand why we should be pursuing that as an option. Do you know what Crawley and Mid Sussex think about this as an option?
Well, I could ask Jane what the scores on the doors are, because these meetings are happening across the place. I'll say what I do know now, because of what I did know going into this, was that although Mid Sussex were taking a neutral paper to council, there the preference of the administration there was going to be for option B2. Jane might be able to tell us in a moment where we've got to. Crawley was a tiny little bit more mysterious, in that they had not disclosed what their preference was in terms of any of the options. I think they possibly share Councillor Knowles' view on this a little bit, which is understandable. We may know more because their meeting is going on this evening. Jane, do you have anything for us?
Not on those two, I'm afraid. I've just heard that Aaron has gone for B2, and I heard earlier today that Chichester had. That's in addition to Ada and Worthing that were yesterday, and also Canty that went for option A yesterday.
If I can come back, I think I'm right in saying Crawley tried to go with Banstead and Reigate and were told that wasn't an option that was likely to be acceptable.
That's correct. They had an option that they wanted to explore with Reigate and Banstead, and they needed to submit that on the Surrey timetable, because Surrey is on the fastest of fast tracks on local government reorganisation, and that was not accepted for putting out for full consultation by the government. So essentially that was closed to them. But interestingly, I do believe it was continuing to support the Reigate and Banstead option is still an option that is being put before members in Crawley this evening, along with the options that we're considering and also the don't support anything option. So we may learn something later this evening. Councillor Utan.
Thank you. Can I just query that? Does that then mean that Crawley, who are remaining very close as to their intentions, could actually decide that they don't want us?
That's an interesting question. Well, in theory, they could do. Yes, they could. I suppose one could infer that from voting, if they were to vote in favour of Reigate and Banstead again. I think any of the other options, A, B1 or B2, would be in with us. I think I wouldn't necessarily say if they preferred no option, they don't want to support any option at all. I think that might, I wouldn't infer that as not wanting to be with us. I would possibly take that as some degree of either A, dissatisfaction with the process, or B, they're happy with any of the three options, A, B1 or B2, but that's for their council to say. No, we don't know, I'm afraid, no. Yes, Chief Executive has contributed, it's quite helpful this, that in the engagement in Crawley, the residents in Crawley were very much in favour of 2 unitaries and in favour of B2 was their highest scoring preference, much as it was in our district. Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Leader. I just really want to expand on what I said at the council meeting because I wasn't expecting to have to talk and it took me slightly by surprise. But there you go. I'm very sceptical about this whole organisational change. And I feel very upset about it in a way because I've seen the work that you and the CEO and all the officers here have put into this. It's been a labour of love, if nothing else. And I really appreciate it. But I'm sceptical about the whole thing, as I said. Why has a Labour government decided to change the way local government is arranged unless it's going to benefit them as a Labour government? It doesn't make sense, does it? So, the fact that, and I alluded to this last night, I didn't allude to it, I actually came out with it. I feel that Brighton and Hove, being a Labour administration, will probably be the favoured option amongst all the other options across East, West Sussex and the various districts, because it makes sense for the Labour government to gain more power locally in a devolved situation. So for that reason, because I feel that it's difficult to know how to put this, I don't feel we're being hoodwinked, but I feel we're being manoeuvred. And that's the reason I wanted to abstain. However, obviously, we have to put our residents first and foremost. Our residents, our parishes who actually do the groundwork and would be doing even more now as the second tier of local government, need to be supported. And therefore, the smaller local government can be, the better that can be achieved. So I abstained, obviously, but reason tells me that the smaller government we have, the smaller local government we have, the more effective it'll be. The problem I've got is that I'm afraid it's going to cost us all an awful lot of money. Whatever the government say, the experience of those who have been devolved already shows us that it hasn't worked financially. So whatever West Sussex claim, whatever we claim, whatever Brighton Hove claim, whatever East Sussex claim, and all the other district councils, it's going to end up costing us money. And it's a sad day when we have to make this kind of decision. That's all I've got to say, really. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Knoll. I understand what you're saying, and I understand where you're coming from with it. As I said the other night, I think in terms of what's going on with this whole thing, whose voice is going to matter. There are all sorts of rumours around local government, around MPs, around government departments, and this, that, and the other about what's going to happen. Has it all been decided beforehand? And you can get someone who'll tell you any of the above. And I sort of decided quite some time ago that the best way to approach this on behalf of the council was to go, well, we can't control any of that. All we can do is focus on what we can control, which is working together with our neighbours and partners to put our best foot forward. And then, others will have to be accountable for their part in this at some later stage. That's the kind of the sort of, the bloody minded approach that perhaps I'm a little bit known for sometimes. But I do think, you know, on the optimistic side, you know, I think we just have to say, right, well, sometimes in life you sort of think, you have to think to yourself, well, we're up against it here. And, you know, you can get into a, well, the world's against us sort of mentality. But you can also take the attitude of saying, right, okay, if that's the best you've got, if that's what you want to throw at us, then we'll bloody show you, because we'll do that, and we'll do it in spades, and we'll do it better, and we'll show you that we can do this, and we can do it better than even you think you expect we can. And what drives me is to want to do that for the people who live here, and the people we serve. And that's what motivates me to carry on with this. So that's a very kind term you used there, a labour of love. I wouldn't like to think anyone to think that I love doing this. I mean, okay, maybe there's elements of this process that do appeal to elements of my psyche. I think anyone who knows me probably knows that's the case a little bit. But it has been a labour of love for Horsham and its people. So thank you for saying that. Anyway, shouldn't like to think I like the sound of my own voice too much. So just before I do, Jay, if any other members from other non-members of the cabinet would like to speak, Councillor Walters, Belinda.
Thank you. Devolution. I have always supported devolution, bringing down authority and whatnot down to the lower levels. I never for once ever thought that it would be in the form that we're being faced with now. Don't quite know what I thought it would look like, but not really like this. I was just having a quick look. I mean, yesterday I mentioned housing. Today I'm looking at council tax charges and the harmonisation. Crawley looks like it pays an awful lot more. Houses pay an awful lot more per house council tax than we do here. With Sussex, I can't even get to it unless I live there. So you can search by place and postcode, blah, blah. But harmonisation in my mind always feels like we're looking to increase the price to the highest. But I wonder whether there is actually an option within that harmonisation, whether thoughts were to maybe find the middle line, so that whilst we're the lowest, you know, how does that look like in terms of the amount paid into the bucket versus how much Crawley are paying into the bucket, and whether that would then mean that our people, residents in Horsham district, the increase wouldn't be so much as other areas. I don't know, it just feels like we, as a district, thanks to the good practices that we've had in the past, we've always maintained a very low council tax. And now harmonisation just feels like it's going to the highest. And I just asking the question, I suppose, whether that is, in your mind, that's what might happen, or whether it could be some sort of natural sinking down, that actually the more people that pay less might actually create more services. I don't know, it doesn't feel like it would, but maybe there's mismanagement in other areas that we could perhaps influence from our best practices that we do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. I'll come to Mark in just a second to possibly say a little bit more on this. But I mean, in terms of the process that happens, is we have, whatever the new area is, they have to calculate. I think it's termed an alternative notional amount. So, which is basically kind of like a weighted average or system to say, well, if this was the area now, and what would the council, and this is the council tax that's being raised in totality in this area now, what would our council tax have been at this point? So that kind of means that, well, no, it won't be at the very highest, and it won't be at the very lowest. it'll be somewhere in between. But that's a notional amount for then informing future decisions, because the council will still effectively be sovereign at what level it actually chooses to set the council tax. But obviously the realities of what services they have to deliver are what they are. Mark, you wanted to say something on this?
Yeah, I mean, you've said most of it already, in fact, but I mean, it's if we harmonise, which we obviously will have to harmonise in a unitary, then it's obvious that the council that currently pays the lowest council tax or the residents pay the lowest council tax in Sussex is Horsham. So whoever we combine with, we are going to be the lowest. And if everything being equal, so if the budgets were exactly the same, but just, add in 3, say if we're taking the 2 options, then to reach that figure, there could be some losers and some gainers, because you're not going to. I very much doubt whether a future unitary is going to say, if you live in the northern part of our council area, you pay a different rate of council tax. So I fear that you're right. We will in this district be paying more, but it is ultimately it's up to the councillors to vote on the council tax. So there will be some sort of capping process, no doubt, because it wouldn't be a complete free for all. But we can't commit a future council, just like Parliament can't, to specific tax rates. But yeah, it's not only a possibility. I think it's a complete probability.
Just to add, I think that I believe that harmonisation is something that you have to achieve eventually across the area, where all everyone's, it's still banded, but like, your band D tax would be the same in Crawley as it would be in Horsham, as it would be in Mid Sussex, as it would be in the rest of West Sussex if it was a unitary authority area. You have to get to that point at some point. I believe the legislation is such that that's the case eventually. There is I think the maximum over which you can spread it is 7 years. Very rarely is that actually the case. It's usually quicker than that. But what that means is that you have to get there eventually. Whether you do it quickly or whether you do it slowly is up to the new council.
May I add to that?
Please do.
It strikes me that our council tax is set because we have and I'm sure the chief executive knows all the numbers, in terms of we have a higher number of larger properties in the area. So therefore we can subsidise to some extent the smaller properties. I've sort of cast my mind across Mid Sussex and I think, what does that look like? I really don't have an idea. I mean, I think there's a lot of big houses there. Equally in Crawley, there'd be a lot of smaller houses because of the nature of the building that happened in the 50s, 60s and 70s. So it'll be interesting. I'm going to be watching it from afar, see how it works, see what goes on. But I thank you for your response. Thank you.
Oh, just on that, I mean, it's sort of referred to sometimes as gearing in terms of what the banding makeup of your area is in terms of the distribution of the number of houses at different band levels, and a very blunt way of saying this, and I'll look at Jane or Dominic, and they can let me know if I've got this wrong, but the authorities that are lower geared in terms of having more of the lower band houses in West Sussex would be Crawley, Ada and Worthing. The ones that are higher geared would be ourselves, Mid Sussex, Chichester, and I think Arran is probably somewhere in the middle-ish. I mean, that's very rough, but and it's interesting really, because sometimes there's no escaping from reality in that. We talk about best practice or whether places can learn from each other. Well, broadly speaking, that's where a lot of the split is in terms of who's got the higher band D rates and who's got the lower band D rates kind of corresponds to that, in terms of the higher rates tend to be in the areas with the lower geared council tax. But of course, they would be, wouldn't they? Because we're all trying to provide broadly the same sorts of services, albeit with different specific needs in different specific areas. And if that's the makeup of what your tax base is, then it's going, your equilibrium point of where your tax is going to need to be at is going to be higher in an area where the properties are banded lower, in order to actually raise enough. So I wouldn't want to get too much into, is our council tax lower because our authority's better at this, that, or the other. A lot of it is to do with the world that we live in, and the way things are. But it's obviously it's an important point and matter to raise, because this is the road we're going to be travelling. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to reflect essentially as one of the newer members in the 2023 intake. When I've got first elected onto the council, since then I've enjoyed every minute of it. Well, not every minute of it, but most of it. But why do we do this? We do this. We put ourselves forward into these positions because we're passionate about the communities we live in. We want to see the best for them, and we want to represent them to the best of our ability. I fully support the Cabinet's recommendation. I think we can all agree, and I think there's a consensus here, that none of us really want this, but we have got to make the best of the situation we're in. At the end of the day, central government do have a mandate, they have a majority, and they will get through their reforms one way or another. So I don't think the option of staying silent is viable. I think Councillor Knowles made the point and expanded on why he decided to abstain, for example. And I do understand it to an extent. Don't get me wrong, I do. And I understand the scepticism, because I too am sceptical, like many other people. But we have to try and put the interests of our residents first. Central government may have already made that decision. That may very well be the case, but we don't know that for sure. So we've got to put forward the best option that we think is best for the interests of our residents as a whole, and that is our duty to do that. I fundamentally believe that. If we go back to the consultation, we had 62% of the public in Horsham preference for option B2, 64% of staff, 52% of stakeholders. So that there is a consensus there of what the majority of the public and staff members support. And I think that's clear. And yes, there are going to be issues with any proposal put forward. I personally, and I know many other colleagues share this, concerns about representation are going to come up. I take my position, for example, as a relatively young person who works full time, and I know many other colleagues do now since the elections in 23. The demands on a councillor are going to be astronomical compared to what they are now. And is that going to be viable for many working people? Only time is going to tell. So there are definitely concerns over representation and the diversity of representation of those who can actually afford to take this on as a vocation, which is what it is, and and represent their residents. But which is why it's duty bound on us to try and get the best deal we can possible to keep, as Councillor Noel and others have already alluded to, local government as small and as representative as possible with what we have in front of us. So it's a no-brainer for me, really. It's not ideal at all, and it's not something I would definitely go for. It's certainly not something that I would have envisaged devolutions being. And as a Liberal Democrat, I'm vastly supportive of devolution, but if I were to be brutally honest, I would think the government's ambitions currently with this is not devolution, but centralisation under guise. But we are where we are, and we have to go for the best option we can to try and get our residents the best deal. So, fully in favour of the recommendation, and I hope Cabinet votes for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. I think I'll move to Councillor Mercer, if that's okay, because he had his hand up first on the Cabinet members.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to reassure Councillor Noel, I think. Let's remember that this area of England is in the minority within the UK for the type of levels of government that we have. So Northern Ireland is unitary, Scotland is unitary, Wales is unitary. Great swathes of England have become unitary over the last 20 years. And this corner, you know, from Kent to Hampshire and a little bit north, is the last bastion of the two level system. So for any government that believes it's going to try and rationalise the system, I think it's an obvious target, so to speak. So that for me is the rationale, and it goes with, and I'm distinguishing here between local government reorganisation and devolution, what they're trying to do on the devolution side, where my own belief is that the sort of sub-regional effect of mayors is intended to sort of parallel some of the National Assembly issues that are happening in the other countries. Anyway, that's by the by, we don't know that. But I was tempted, if I had any acting ability, to try and do a yes minister comment, but I'm not good enough to do it. So let us suppose that the Brighton proposal lands on the minister's desk, you know, and he reads it. He goes, "Well, this is so and so, the leader there. It's Labour council. Oh, I like this. Why aren't we doing this?" And the civil servant, I have no doubt, who would be standing next to him, would be saying, "That is an extremely brave decision, Minister, if you want to go down that route." And the reason for that is because central government has to work by the law. And what the white paper said was, down their criteria, if you look at the Brighton proposal, it is 5 unitaries, which are essentially too small in terms of the criteria. They mess with the boundaries, which they're not supposed to do. There has been no engagement with the local authorities concerned, which they were supposed to have had. And there's been no engagement with stakeholders outside Brighton and Hove. And even within Brighton and Hove, they didn't engage with them with this proposal, as far as I'm aware. So the civil servant standing there would say, actually, Minister, you would be extremely likely to receive a judicial review of this decision, probably from all the authorities, because they will all be unhappy apart from Brighton. So I don't think that sort of thought, oh yes, well, government will have decided it because it suits their political advantage, is still open to them, to be honest, along that route.
It was also supposed to address and make sure that those areas that were still in the receipt of special financial consideration no longer need it, and this would actually create 3 new ones that do.
Yeah. So that's another reason. And I would just say, and I suppose if we're coming to the end of the discussion, I would just say, look, we've all sat through the arguments, haven't we, in different fora. We've heard them several times, and I'm clear, personally, on balance, that of all the options, B2 is the optimal choice for our residents, and that's why I will support it in Cabinet.
Thanks, Jay. Mark?
Yeah, it'll come as no surprise to you, Leader, that I will be supporting this recommendation. And if the government agrees with the recommendation for the B2, then I look forward to the next debate, which may be longer and more protracted on what we're going to call it.
Councillor Franklin?
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, those who know me, I tend to be of an optimistic nature. And I tend to like change, or I think I like change, and sometimes I make a change and think, what I do that for? But I suspect probably most of us have an optimistic element to our nature. Otherwise, probably we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. You know, we have a belief that we can make change and contribute. So I like to think that this can work out and it can be positive for residents, which is really what I wanted to focus on. I think something, and it is part of the rationale for this local government reorganisation, is to simplify and clarify to residents who currently we're not very good at explaining who does what, whether what the district council does, what West Sussex County Council does, and we all have conversations with people to try and explain, and we don't do that particularly well. And I think this is an opportunity to clarify that. But there is an enormous, and this is partly my role, I suppose, enormous job of work to do for us to start communicating right now, really, what's coming, what it means, and what the implications, positive and negative, might be throughout this whole process. So I will be taking on that piece of work starting tomorrow, to start to map out what it is we might need to, we will need to communicate to the residents of the whole district.
Thank you, Tony. Always an element of jeopardy when I'm chairing a meeting. I've missed a step along the way, so apologies for that. But could I invite Councillor Finnegan to speak from a scrutiny perspective on this?
Well, thank you, Leader. Just given that we have just heard the feedback of the policy and scrutiny committees at Council, I was wondering whether you actually wanted me to repeat the whole thing for those online, or give a summary to you if I can.
A fairly brief summary, because if anyone's really interested, they can go back and look at one of the recordings.
I'll try to summarise. So yesterday, the Finance and Performance Policy and Scrutiny Committee met, and they were also joined with members of Communities in Place and other councillors. The leader introduced the report to the council. The Democratic Services Duty did a great job in summarising, putting those into categories yesterday. So the categories that we discussed, or that we broke down into, was the financial aspects, the transition, and who would be leading the district or county council staff, and that was dependent on which option was taken forward. We also discussed housing concerns and council services. A large amount of discussion was on councillors and democracy, with the workload, and some of that then falling onto democratic services, and the type of person who would be able to take on the role as a councillor given the demands. We also spoke about parish councils and the sort of what support would be offered to them in the future. We briefly talked about the county council elections, and democracy was worth paying for. Other comments were raised with regards to the stats, and some suggestions were made on that. We also talked about the Brighton's LGR proposal, but in summary, there was a conclusion written up at the end of the meeting yesterday, and all members of the Policy and Scrutiny Committees and additional guests were confirming that they were in agreement with the summary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Finnegan. Other cabinet members, I understand, Councillor Utan. Thank you very much for coming this evening and for your contribution and for staying with us so long. And yeah, thank you, Councillor. Cabinet members, Colette, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to say that, as I indicated in the previous debate at Council, I found the contribution from councillors in that meeting to be very convincing, that we need to choose, to quote a number of them, the least bad option. and that I found their care regarding all aspects of local government reorganisation to be very interesting and very important, and something that we no doubt will be taking forward. As I mentioned, this particular option that's recommended to us tonight does tick all the boxes regarding the imperatives that the government wants us to meet, but also finds opportunity, which I think is a very, very important part of a process that is, to echo Councillor Boffey, quite sad in its own way, in that it is the end of Horsham District Council. There's a lot of pride and commitment in Horsham District Council for this district. I also think it's sad that, and this echoes Councillor Jeffrey to some extent, I do think it's sad that under the auspices of so-called devolution, local government reorganisation will mean services for residents will be less local. However, I do still think that this option that's recommended to us is more dynamic than simply having a replication of an existing county council. It will also provide more councillors, not as many as we would like, but it will mean that there are more. And just to reiterate, I'm really glad that opportunity and positivity comes through in the business case, and that the importance of that can't really be understated. Thank you, Leader.
Sam.
Thank you very much, Leader. This will be the third debate that I've had this week on this, well, amongst many debates previously, so I just wanted to kind of get my head around it. The main driving force that I felt from having sat through the county meeting was the costs. Now, that was the thing that was hammered again and again. And we've had the debate and saying that it's virtually a rounding error. But in that debate, people also raised the absolute overwhelming financial pressures that there are from social care and special educational needs. And this won't touch the sides unless that's, work's done on that. And one of the things that I think we do really well here, and it's a shame that our Conservative members have had to leave, but I'll put it on the record, all three of them have done fantastic things to shape our district. In fact, they've stayed later when they didn't need to. Councillor Lowe is very passionate about the environment. Councillor Vickers works incredibly hard to make sure our planning decisions are right and in the interests of our community. And I've shadowed Councillor Utan as well. And I feel things that we're doing very well now and I feel proud of. They were started on the previous administration, and things like Wilder Horsham was started on the previous administration. Often, despite the fact that we stand in elections against other parties, there's a hell of a lot that we all share in common in terms of wanting to make our district better because we have a connection with the district. I just wanted to say that's a shame they left because I wanted to make that point to say I really, really value, and I felt it's been a real honour to be part of this group and to work with the officers at this council who deliver a huge amount for our community with a relatively tiny sliver of council tax funds. And I just wanted to highlight how we can deliver more to save against those big expenditures. So with money spent on youth services, for example, £1 spent on youth services is estimated to save £2.80 in other additional costs, young people being out of education, involved in crime. So sometimes you can invest, and if it's spent wisely, you can end up helping to save the bigger budgets. And if you're looking at things like adult social care, the well-being and wellness as people age can be really shaped by active travel, by lack of loneliness. And I kind of think of what things do we do here and how have we, what have we learnt from being part of this council, and how can we best shape that going forward? So in my family, my father-in-law had a really bad hip, but he was in a lot of pain, and he found that he could get discounted membership to Chanctonbury Leisure. He now goes to the gym all the time, and he looks about 10 years younger. He's active and fit. And if we have that across our district, and we provide spaces for people to socialise, and we provide good quality leisure facilities, and we provide the space and pitches for sports clubs, people will age better longer. Things like walking rugby, so through the whole age range. And those things don't necessarily have to cost a lot of money, but could save a lot. And early support for young people with special educational needs can save a huge amount of money if they've got the additional support outside it with, being neurodivergent. They might then not be excluded from school or not be out of school if they had the right support earlier, which can save money on the bottom line. It's the right thing to do, but it can save money going forward. And I think what do we do well here? Things like Wilder Horsham. On a smaller scale, there's more chance that we can build those up into a new authority across Mid-Sussex, or with our voluntary sector. When I hosted the housing summit, the manager of the Y Centre said he lives in Crawley, but he works with young people in Horsham. And he saw how rich the voluntary sector is here and the support that young people get in Horsham district. And he said it made him really angry at how much worse it was for the young people in Crawley. If we were in an authority that we share with Crawley, they could learn from us. A new authority could be better and provide better for residents across. And we're really proud of what we do here. But anyone that's been to Tilgate Park can see that they're really proud of Tilgate Park. And whichever authorities we join with, they'll have things they're really proud of. And I'm actually quite looking forward to saying, that's our park now when you go to Tilgate Park, and it's something that belongs to all of us. And we've created artificial boundaries, and I happen to live in Colgate, so I'm right on the nub of all three, Mid-Sussex and Crawley, and I use all of those. And actually, there is hope that we can do more. It's a shame that Horsham District Council is not going to exist. I think it's brilliantly run. I think the officers are fantastic, and there's just a brilliant atmosphere. So I'm very sad about that, but I just want to make sure that what's good here now and the hard work of the officers and of the members can be carried on. And if it is the option we don't want, we need to work with that and try and get the best out of it.
Thanks very much, Sam. Just before I come to Jonathan, I'm just going to say, and also on the positive side about Crawley Borough Council, I'm looking forward to them helping us relearn how to build council houses again. Jonathan.
Just wanted to add my thanks for all the work that you and the officers here tonight and the Chief Executive have put in over the last 6 months to this amazing process, on top of all your other responsibilities. To actually plan your own demise is such an incredible project to take on. Congratulations on that. Many people this evening have commented on the residents, and they're absolutely right that, to me, the guiding principle is what's best for our residents. And the other group that particularly interests me is our businesses. And we have a fantastic range of businesses in the Horsham district, Horsham town, all of our subsidiary towns and villages. And for me, what is the best solution to enhance their businesses and keep close to the organisation that they have worked with, i.e. Horsham District Council. And we go out nearly every week seeing a new business, and we know that there's great enthusiasm for the district we live in and the support that we can give them. And I think there's no question that of the options, the one that we are recommending, B2, is the best for enterprise in this district as well.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. Right, you'll all be glad to know that I'm moving towards wrapping up now. But I've just got 3 or 4 things I want to briefly say. Firstly, to echo what Jonathan's just said about the contribution of the staff, the officers, all the authorities in this. And I think I'll go a little bit further on that and reinforce what I said the other night about the importance of what the officers across all the authorities have said in the consultation responses. And although I would imagine, I believe counties was one particular view, there was a very strong preference in all of the other authorities, and I think it's important we pay heed to that, because we'd be nothing without our officers. Something about the collaborative approach with, I think, you know, I'm proud of a chunky business case that might not be everyone's idea of a great read, but I'm proud of what's been put together. I'm proud of how it's been done as well. You know, we've known all along, I guess, that there was one council that was going to have one particular view and the others were going to have shades of another view of how it was going to go. And someone said to me recently, has said, "Oh God, I bet that's been horrible. I mean, you must have just been fighting all the time." And it's like, well, actually, no, we haven't. There's been the odd disagreement, but really, everybody's just said, well, we accept those differences, and we don't have to talk about that until the very, very end. So let's just put that on one side and focus on the work, whichever authority we've come from. And it's worked very well in everybody's interests, I think. I think, to depart from that a second, I'll say, why do I really, what is it about two unitaries for me? Is it, is it self-interest? Is it, this, that, or the other? Well, it really is that point about we need to build something new for the future rather than carrying on preserving half of something that's had its day. We need this. It's vital that we have the transformation and the public sector reform as part of this. Government talks about it, but we really mean it, and we have to deliver that. And I'm afraid, in order to really actually do that, we have got to change the system rather than one part of it absorb another part of it. I think it's absolutely critical if this is going to be a success. But the final thing I will say, having said that, is a piece of advice I got from a leader of a recently unitarised authority over the weekend, whose key piece of advice was, whatever you might think, don't diss the other side's business case or the other side's proposal too much, because you might find yourself implementing it. Which is what exactly happened in their situation. I mean, there's a jokey side to that, but the serious side to it is, it's a bit of a call to arms from me, really. Wherever this actually ends up, whatever the decision from the government is, as soon as that decision is made, it's got to be all hands to the pump to make it work. Whatever ward we represent, whatever party we're or none we're from, that has got to be the focus, because we have got to make it work. And I do believe we can. There'll be degrees of how much we can make it work, but I have faith in the people in this area and faith in the people in this institution, and I think we can make it work. And when we know what the final outcome is, that's what we all have to focus on, rather than the past or what might have been. So with that, I'm going to draw the debate to a close and ask for a show of hands from Cabinet members in favour of the recommendations on pages 3 and 4. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. All right. Oops. Item 6 then is the forward plan. This item is for noting. I'm supposed to, but I'm not going to ask if any Cabinet member has anything to say on this, because it's been a very long evening. Item 7, to consider matters of special urgency. There are no urgent matters to consider this evening, and so therefore I close the meeting and thank you all very much for your time and dedication. Thank you.